I am Glendora Lashley. Welcome to Tobago Updates. Earlier today, we brought you live coverage of the presentation of the statement of the draft estimates of expenditure for the Tobago House of Assembly for the upcoming fiscal year 2022 to 2023. This evening, we have a panel in studio to discuss the draft estimates as read out in the House this morning by Chief Secretary and Secretary with responsibility for finance, Fali Chavez Augustine. I have with me our guests in studio. This evening, we have, returning from this morning, Dr. Shane Mohammed, political scientist. We also have Tobago's very own Dr. Ellis Boris, former THA Chief Administrator, now Technical Engineering Advisor to the Secretary of the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment. We also have our very own Didan Daniel, who is the President of the Tobago Agricultural Society. And online with us, we have Kay Trotman, the President of the Tobago Bed and Breakfast Association, as well as the PRO of the Innovative Democratic Alliance. Good evening, panelists.
Good evening. Good evening.
Just checking to make sure that my online panelists, Kay Trotman, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Well, we're not hearing you just yet, so I don't know if you need to turn your mic on.
It is on. It is actually on.
All right, so what I would do is ask each of you to basically share some opening statements. The Chief Secretary and Secretary with responsibility for finance presented his maiden budget estimates today in the House. Very long, but he justified why he took that time. At least he gave us a reason. So I'm going to start with Dr. Boris, who is immediately on my right. Dr. Boris, what did you think about the Chief Secretary's maiden presentation today?
I think the Chief Secretary has done extremely well. I glean from what he has delivered to Tobago and to the nation as a whole as a very organized, well laid out arrangement. It's just the implementation that has to take place now. We just need to ensure that whatsoever funds is delivered to the THA, that we spend it wisely.
Okay, all right. So let me go on to Dr. Mohammed.
I think, and good evening to everyone, and good evening Tobago, and those looking on. I think when I listened to the Chief Secretary during the press conference, we would have heard him throughout the entire presentation, but when I listened to him at his press conference, he tied it all together so that it gave me, I can now say safely that it was a very comprehensive package. That the only thing I think was missing in his speech is that so comprehensive and so long was his budget presentation, it really set the tone and set the framework for what is to come, not only in 2022, 2023, but in the years ahead. So that is how I would look at it. It was very comprehensive. He was able to articulate that in his press conference. I would have preferred that he had done it in the House at the end of his presentation. But nonetheless, he did say why he took that long, and that we could look forward to shorter presentations, since this was the foundation of what is to come.
All right, so Didan.
Well, for me, his maiden budget statement, I choose to be optimistic about these things. In terms of the policy prescriptions, he was very strategic in its orientation. We are a little short on the details, and understandably so, because a lot of the details will be fleshed out in the ensuing debates and so on. So that is pretty good. One of the things that I am concerned of always with budget is that the implementation, because we do have an implementation deficit disorder traditionally in this space. And I would like to see some of the policy prescriptions be implemented in a way that affords this society value for money, effectiveness. It moves the meter on productivity in the country generally, Tobago in particular, and that we harness all the linkages that exist among the industries, and we build that vision that he has of making Tobago the greatest little planet on this island on the planet, that we collectively harness our energies towards attaining that. It is achievable, and we just need the right visioning and the right leadership, and it certainly can happen.
All right, so let's go to Kay. Kay, when you heard the maiden presentation, what were your thoughts?
It was indeed a long budget. And as I would say, the devil is now in the detail in terms of how are we going to flesh this thing out to give us what we want in going forward. You know, one of the things that what immediately came to mind is that when we are in opposition, administrations normally critique the governing oppositions normally critique the governing administrations about a wish list. And this is indeed a wish list because it was predicated on 6.9% of the national budget. What becomes key in the details is if we do not get the 6.9, which is normal, we normally get the lower end of the budget. I am yet to see what is going to move the central government to give us more than they have traditionally given us before. What then becomes the prioritizing areas for us in going forward? So my concern is in the details and the implementation.
Right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard the opening remarks from our panelists. We're going to take a short break and come back. Stay with us. You're viewing Tobago Updates.
Are you an artist, reader, or passionate about culture? Then join us on Saturday, 2nd July from 3 p.m. for the official Tobago book launch of The Chronicles of Kyrie, held at One Love Arts, Atelier and Emporium, located at Wallfield Trace, Canby, Tobago. An evening of culture, folklore, dance and music, celebrating our unique culture. Admission is free. For updates and further information, follow us on Instagram, The Chronicles of Kyrie, or call us at 460-5439. See you there.
Advertise with Tobago Updates. Call 284-6597. If you have a small or large business, we can get your information in front of the masses. Reach our rapidly growing viewership on Facebook and YouTube. Promote your brand in Trinidad and the Caribbean through M&E TV Now and Gayel. Yes, we can build unique ads for your business. Call now 284-6597 and advertise with us.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with Tobago Updates. We are chatting with our panelists, including our very own Dr. Ellis Boris. We have Dr. Shane Mohammed, we have Dida and Daniel, and online we have Kate Trotman. And earlier, each panelist shared with us their opening remarks. We heard comprehensive budget, the devil is in the details coming later on. Kate Trotman opening to say, well, listen, we've got to critique this thing, not just because we're in opposition, but we've got to ask you, okay, how will this be fleshed out? So let's go into some of the details. Basically, our Chief Secretary and Secretary for Finance presented a budget that is asking for a projected 6.9 of a national budget, 6.9%, right? What he said earlier is that there's an expectation, projection, that the national budget will be around $57.4 billion. And so Tobago is asking for 3.97 billion, of which they are hoping to have 3.07 billion for recurrent expenditure, 900 million for development, 59.7 million for URP, and 53.1 million for CPEP. Generally speaking, this shows an increase of 992 million for recurrent expenditure. How do you gentlemen and lady feel about that? And I want to start with the technocrat here, Dr. Boris, because Dr. Boris, you have been head of the assembly already in terms of an administrator, chief administrator, so you understand perhaps better than all of us here the details with respect to spending and allocations and that kind of thing. Yes, it's a political mandate, but doing the actual work to make sure that things happen. You said you felt as if it was comprehensive. First of all, do you feel as if the ask is realistic? Will we be able to get that elusive 6.9%? And then how does this work out in terms of the numbers?
If we are conscientious to build a better Tobago, the 6.9% is just comfortable to give that to Tobago, because you want to build a country, you're building an island that has been lagging behind in its development processes, and therefore, at least when I used to work as an administrator or the chief administrator, when the budget discussion comes, I will say to the budget people who come to Tobago, all the line items you see there are important to the development or the maintenance of the programs in Tobago. So I'm saying that if the central government is conscientious to improve the conditions of Tobago, they can give us the 8% that they would promise to give us before.
Okay.
So therefore, I am saying the request is realistic. There is no padding in it to say, well, listen, I could get cuts here or cut there. What is asked for is what is required. And therefore, I think in all goodness towards Tobago, central government should release that money without any problem.
All right, so you're saying it's possible and you're hopeful. Dr. Mohammed, well, you explained earlier today how you felt about this situation, but of course we may have viewers who didn't get in this morning. So I'm going to ask you, not necessarily in the same fashion, but to tell us your thoughts on this ask.
I think when you look at it, and I have to see it from a governance perspective and from a political perspective as well. We have, and let me deal with it from the political side first. We are in Trinidad and Tobago, our politics is one of antagonism and lacks a level of camaraderie and lacks a level of cooperation, especially when it comes to parties forming administrations, administrations being formed by different parties. With that said, I don't believe that the Minister of Finance, to use Dr. Boris's words, is conscientious enough to give to Tobago the 6.9%. That's the first thing. Then I go to, what if we end up in a situation where the national budget is not an estimated 57.4%, but what if it's 50%, it's not 57.4 billion, what if it's 50 billion? What if we are caught up in the world, in all that is happening in the world economics, where there are economies that are has to be on the lookout for shocks and collapses, right? We already see what is happening with regard to the prices of rice and flour. And we here, and I'll say we here in Tobago, and taking into consideration my colleague Dan is here, It then calls upon the Tobagonian governance structure to put into place structures and mechanisms to build the confidence and to link it between Tobago and Trinidad in order for Tobago to get the higher amount.
When you say build the confidence, what exactly do you mean?
Right, and when I say build the confidence, I mean that, as Kay said earlier, you need to tear this apart, and you need to see the devil is in the details, right? So my first perspective is it was very comprehensive, and yes, it laid the foundation because this whole document can be used for a long-term development, for Tobago, because it is so heavy in terms of policies and plans that it may take the entire 4 years to see it through.
Right, so that was a very interesting part in terms of, in the end, this morning, it came out in the question and answer segment, because many of us who were viewing did, and we were asking, well, okay, can that happen in one fiscal year?
Yeah.
However, at the end of the question and answer segment with the media, that's when the Chief Secretary said, or maybe he did say it earlier and we missed it, but that's when he really clarified for us that, listen, what I did or what I attempted to do is lay the foundation for the term, so that the budgets to come, the statements to come, will not be so, broad, but they will be kind of drawing from this. And so, Didan, I want to ask you, do you think that the ask by our Finance Secretary and Chief Secretary, is it realistic from what we've seen in the past?
Okay, well, I understand the political gamesmanship with regards to with the ask and so on, but I'm saying that we should have a kind of mind shift change where these things are concerned. Trinidad, Tobago is part of the unitary state of Trinidad and Tobago, right? And if you do a trace dollar study anywhere in Tobago, and see if you drop $1 in Tobago, it rebounds to the national benefit, right? If you buy a bottle of water, you could trace that that dollar to some place down in Piaco, somewhere around there, or on the Chocha Rural Highway, the money that's spent in the country. So don't look at it as giving Tobago this. You're investing in a part of the country, which is Trinidad and Tobago, to the residents on an island, right? And there is benefits to be derived throughout, right?
Okay.
Yes, the template has been set by the Dispute Resolution Committee that set the upper and lower limits for things, but there must be a time where you have to go on the knees and not rely on this template, right? And see it as an investment in the country. Of course, the administration has to demonstrate a certain level of confidence, because, for years, running, the Auditor General hasn't been able to offer an opinion on the finances, if I'm correct. And so there might be some confidence lag there. But there's an opportunity now. There's always an opportunity in newness to break out of that mold in different respects and demonstrate some true accountability. See it as an investment in the country, a part of the country. Make sure that the plans are well thought out, you have value for money, it's efficient, it drives productivity, and all those good things, and all the good things will be added onto us.
All right, so
Just spend the money proper.
You are also hoping that Cabinet and Corporation Soul in the end would exercise some goodwill and say, well, yes, we're going to get to this 6.9 and offer this to the Tobago House of Assembly.
Or more.
Yeah,
right?
certainly. I mean, I'm sure somebody could appeal to the higher self of Conelbert.
No.
All right. Before we get a little feisty, let me bring in Kay Trotman. Kay, what do you think about what these gentlemen? Kay shaking her head already. Dr. Boris and Didan, they are hopeful that some sort of compassion will come from Cabinet and the Minister of Finance. Earlier today,
I would like to think of myself as a
so we've got to raise the volume for.
You have to, yes, probably because I'm speaking very loudly. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, go ahead now.
Okay. I would like to consider myself a hopeful person like the rest of my fellow panelists. However, realistically, if I go on empirical information, Tobago has never gotten to 5% of the national budget. What makes us think we are going to get 6.9 in a time of crisis, global crisis, national crisis? What makes us think that? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And therefore, how realistic is our projection? It may be bordering a bit, I would like to think, on wishful thinking, and some may consider a bit of recklessness, because there is no way, under the current circumstances, we can be hopeful to appeal to conscience. We have to do more than appeal to conscience. We have to show how the development of a Tobago along a specific line is going to rebound, not just to Tobago, but as someone said, to Trinidad and Tobago as a country, and therefore Tobago as a responsible partner in the process can deliver on the promises it said it can do with the monies it is asking for. So it's an investment in Tobago, yes, but it's an investment in Trinidad and Tobago, to which Tobago has the capacity to deliver.
So isn't that now it's just bad timing in the sense that because we are in more of a decline economically and what's projected to happen throughout the world? I mean, this morning, as we said earlier, Britain, the United States, and they are preparing for stagflation. This is after 40 years, basically, the UK is seeing inflation at 9.1%. This has been unheard of, you know, for many of us at this point in time. And that ultimately will trickle down to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and the region. And I suppose is that part of why you're saying this is bordering on recklessness, not just wishful thinking, but being reckless?
I want to say yes, because it is. Some of these things are outside of our control to happen. We would like to see them happen, but they may be outside of our control. And therefore, we need to level with Tobagonians to indicate them this is not just an ask and a right. Yes, the dispute resolution has set some boundaries, so there are rights, yes. But it is more than just a right and conscientious thinking. It is going to be hard pressed going forward. Therefore, what are the strategic focus area we need to concentrate on? Because we are pretty sure, even though we have asked for this amount, it may not be forthcoming.
Right, and I suppose we got to wait and find out. Earlier there was, I think, the minority councillor, Petel Daniel Benoit. She said that in her perception, the tone of the budget was one that did not signal, you know, a willingness to collaborate with central government. Now, we're all familiar with how things have happened with this new administration and the relationship, at least that we've seen publicly, with the cabinet. What I want to come to a bit is if we are to look at Section 6, and if you have the budgets, for those of you all viewing, if you have the budget in front of you, you can go to page 73, 74 there, right, where it talks about financing of this 2023 expenditure estimates, right? And it talks to revenues. Total revenue in Tobago is here 219.24 million, right? Total tax revenue is 217.17 million, whereas total non-tax revenue is 207 million. This is part of what was outlined when the Chief Secretary spoke about potentially getting additional income. If you look at the multilateral agreement section, which is 6.5, he spoke about basically speaking to the CDB, I believe that's the Caribbean Development Bank, to try to find funding for like the construction of an innovative facility to replace the Scarborough Secondary School and to deal with coastal protection and so on. That's a possible 500 million. This is a conversation. There are no confirmations in this. There's also the possibility, and Dr. Boris, I want to ask you about this, 35 million from the IDB to go towards the Scarborough Renewal Program, right, Dr. Boris? And we've seen your face attached to works that's happening in that respect with, you know, consultations and this initial plan. And then the possibility of trying to get 8 million for a Rise and housing development, right? These are potential buffers if they happen. Are these things realistic? Do we think that the THA can actually get this funding to supplement what is being asked for in light of, go back to our revenues, 219 million in total, and tax revenue from that, non-tax revenue is 207 million there, right? So we're trying to do some maths here in terms of what we have on island and what we're asking for. And so I'm asking you, gentlemen, in this initial phasing, even as we look to what the Finance Secretary or Chief Secretary spoke about with respect to trying to get funding from outside, because there's also foreign direct investment, which no details came out in that in terms of numbers, and possible public-private partnerships. Again, no real numbers there. Long-term borrowing, the Chief Secretary spoke to the 164.2 million that was raised via bond by the previous executive. So you have that kind of thing going on. But we're crunching those numbers and looking at realistically, what can we expect in terms of getting that kind of additional funding? Did I see you shaking your head? So let me come to you very quickly while Dr. Morris is deep in thought.
I'm just kind of finding what call for difference between what it actually spent or the cost to run the island and the revenue collection kind of startling. And I'm thinking that there are some ways in which we could increase that. There are various ways. First and foremost, we have a lot of facilities that people use for free. Yes, it's a public good, but you have to pay some money to use it. So we need to get some funds from that. We have a whole lot of companies that have branch office operations in Tobago. We need to do some kind of prorated, when they declare their taxes and so on, we could do a prorating of the amount of revenue they generate in this space. And that should, all it needs is a line on the tax form to say, okay, revenues derived in Tobago, and then we have a mean to account for that. And so that figure could go up. But certainly, tax revenue or non-tax revenue is a function of productivity. We can't get away from now on day. We have to produce, and the residual being the tax, these other revenues. So we have to really chart a part of productivity, whether or not it's in the extractive sector, whether or not in the primary production sector, services sectors, and so on. And when we do produce, then we have a basis to say we're getting these revenues from these external sources because we are part of a unitary state. Some of the fundamentals in terms of the negotiation have to have sign off from a higher authority. Right. Yes, we big man and thing, and we want to call some shots. But some of the economic fundamentals are national, right? And sometimes we can't disaggregate Tobago-centric figures from the national. And so when negotiation happen with these international organizations, that is the basis of the conversation, right? And so we have to be realistic about that. And once we on a even keel and we have a developmental pathway, then we could start to negotiate for these things. But while optimism is good, because optimism does birth possibilities, right? It has to be tempered with a little bit of realism. Right? But go for it, man. What the hell?
Well, basically, let me come to Dr. Morris then.
No, listen. No, you have some figures there, and at least those are the general figures that they are giving that have been placed there. But we need to know, and we know that they're extracting natural gas of there from the Tobago waters. Why? How come that we cannot one day, or the central government cannot be generous from knowing that they have been taking this natural gas without paying, or not instead of considering it in the revenue of Tobago? Why can't they be what? Facilitating in this sense to say, listen, we have been taking this gas for so many years. Give Tobago something.
Well, they
have not analyzed at no time the quantity of extraction out there. So nobody in Tobago knows anything about how much gas is being taken out there.
Right. The deputy chief secretary, who is responsible for energy, he's saying that that's part of what they're going to do. So in terms of advocate for
the deputy chief secretary is responsible for energy.
Yes, that's part of the portfolio because remember the office of the deputy chief secretary under this administration has become a whole new thing.
Right,
So
but he
there are
already
areas
spoke
there,
about
energy affairs, diaspora affairs,
okay, so
lots of
okay
different.
because he
yeah.
didn't I didn't hear him
It was
mention.
mentioned in the budget.
I did not hear him mention that.
No, not that part.
Yeah.
It was mentioned in the budget that some negotiation or some discussion will be taken into consideration about the royalty that's supposed to be paid to the Tobago for the extraction.
Do you
right?
expect that, Dr. Boris, before I come to you, Dr. Mohammed, as a technocrat in the public service, do you expect that this sort of negotiation with a view to seeing release of funds can happen within this fiscal, or is that fiscal 25?
If I always talk about the conscientiousness of central government to Tobago's needs and the challenges that we have here in Tobago, right? If you want to do something, I'm telling you, if central government wants to do something, they will do it. I was there when we went to Canada to get those fast ferry, the first fast ferry that came here. And when we were in Canada, we looked at the fast ferry, we called back to say, okay, it is working good, it's going fine. Within a day or two, that boat was ordered to come down to Trinidad and Tobago. So whatsoever government wants to do, they do it.
All right, so let's go to Dr. Mohammed now. And then we come to Kay, and after that I want to go through some of the recurrent expenditure because we have to look at areas like tourism and agriculture and infrastructure and so on. So Dr. Mohammed.
So what Dr. Boris is saying that, you know, there has to be a level of conscientiousness, and you're putting conscientiousness with consciousness as well.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that the government has any conscience. And I'm not afraid to say that. That's the first thing. So let's shake it up a little bit, right?
At least I wouldn't get involved into
I don't believe
those areas, I'm just trying to make sure.
I'm already an enemy of the state, and I really don't care at this point in time. But when you look at it, with all of what you've all the numbers that you've called, the 209 million, the 207.17, the 207, that comes up to a total of $647.17 million, right? However, the recurrent expenditure alone is there's going to be
don't add all of those. You know, the total revenue is 219 million. The others I was breaking it down.
Oh, you're breaking it down?
Yeah, in
oh
terms
God!
of what's non-tax and what's taxed.
So
yeah,
them have no money.
You're going too far.
You're going too far. So we are looking at $219 million
flat,
flat. And there's something that was brought into it was introduced through the autonomy bill, which is the Tobago Development Fund. And I am saying that the very same royalties that Dr. Boris is talking about with regard to the oil, the gas that is being extracted, I am saying that the time has come for that a percentage should be worked out, whereby a percentage of the revenue raised from the extraction of that gas comes into directly the Tobago Development Fund. That's one. Two, you see the thing called CPEP and URP? The thing called CPEP and URP should not be existing because it is a cash cow for political gain, and it is not for any real development and no long-term job that can sustain households in the way we want it sustained.
And I think Kay Trotman may probably agree with you because the tourism sector, they want employees. Yeah. Kay Trotman?
Definitely. I think, gentlemen, with all due respect, we are scholars, yes, but we need to deal with the budget, how it hits the man on the street and how they feeling it in their pocket. And our budget, therefore, needs to focus a bit on how are we addressing the needs of the man on the street, the strategic areas that we need to reach into. I love what the Dan said about productivity. There is a part that we as citizens need to be aware of. So while our budget may be hopeful with optimism, there is a call to us as citizenry that there is a level of productivity needed so that these revenues that we are earning, these non-tax revenues that we have control over, is dependent on our productivity. And we have not yet spoken to how are we going to jumpstart, how are we going to kick off in that area, that we become responsible for the revenues we earn. And while we do get our subvention from Trinidad, we are not solely dependent on that, because we have kicked in revenue generating capacity that we control.
All right, fair enough. Now, don't go anywhere. Go ahead, Dr. Boris.
Interject here with respect to, I'm trying to bring out the view, because I was there when we were discussing the URP, how we're going to restructure URP. It was probably, I don't know if that was a political arrangement, but at least this new administration is trying to make URP, well, at least is where you get your money from, which is a unemployment relief funding, but actually the name is to be changed, as far as I learned, to a sustainable development program. And this new arrangement will follow the Millennium Goals from the United Nations to enable URP to enable persons to become a little bit more involved with their skills and their career, and you train them and they move on. It is not one where you are keeping people there to arrangement for political reasons. At least I don't like to get into those areas, because but I just want to indicate.
No, but that is something, again, it comes back down to, it was not said.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. The information needs to come out.
All right, the information will come out from the various secretaries.
But
right?
something as
important as that
should have been said in today's budget, and not just simply say URP 59.7 million, UCPEP's 53.1 million. I am of the opinion, and hear me out on this one, right? I agree with using the money from URP and CPEP to develop people's skills. Yeah. Skill development, I'm all for, right? And as you rightfully say, take those skills and put it into productivity in agriculture, in tourism, in hospitality, because we can train people to become hospitable, right? Because they need to understand on the island that a smile is going to earn us $1, right? A shake hand is going to earn us $1. But I am saying that the monies that is used for the preservation of the environment should be a public-private partnership between the private sector and the administration and the
Which private sector are you talking about? Because if we're being realistic, let's look at the island of Tobago.
Right, so the ones that come from Trinidad and set up in Tobago.
Yeah, right? But we can't really go down that road, can we? Because we're talking about Tobago's island development, which means that we want basically to improve Tobagonians and the lives of Tobagonians, the lives of people. Exactly. When I say Tobagonians, the lives of people who are resident in Tobago. You're working here, you're living here, so you're raising your children.
Yeah, so we train them,
right? But I am saying, you see the cutting of the grass and the keeping the environment and keeping the foliage in that we see when we go down Claude Noel. We don't see that in Trinidad. We just see bush. So in Tobago, it is well kept. I am saying it should be maintained by private businesses.
Yeah, much. So you're talking about, just an example, if we look at like the Orkinshaw roundabout,
yes,
and some other areas where you have
Republic Bank,
right, you have a private entity, a private entity doing that. Yeah. Now, I suppose that's another discussion, and we may need a whole other hour to really come into whether or not
that is the reason why
these people are stepping up.
Probably the Chief Secretary did not mention, or whosoever didn't mention about, because this URP discussion is one that will take a whole hour or more, you know, because when you're going to restructure the URP operation into a program that is going to assist our young people going forward, then you need to understand that it's a skill bank we develop.
Well, one of the things, Dr. Boris, I am happy to hear Dr. Boris say this, because much like Dr. Mohammed, I actually think that those two programs are a waste of time.
Yes.
And I remember some years ago, somebody came to me when I was at Infrastructure and asked me about their service in URP. And I was like, what service? You don't build service in URP. But because of the nature of how it has happened over the years, people had that expectation. What we saw, Dr. Boris is bringing some light to it, is when you listen to what the Chief Secretary announced before with respect to providing leave, providing, you know, further incentives and so on, then I started wondering, I'm like, that's changing the whole dynamic of the URP. But the Chief didn't actually provide that information at the time.
That information will come out.
So we get into that.
That is the fundamental
gentlemen,
on which,
before we go,
on which the adjustment for URP will remain, and URP will become a very lucrative program for the upliftment of skills and training for the people in Tobago.
I just want to interject and say,
Dr. Mohammed, we don't have time to interject because I need to run back to Dr. Didan and then to Kay. We do have some numbers for the other areas. We don't have the time, unfortunately, for some of these things.
So quickly, on the whole URP program, I've been tracking it for the past couple of years in terms of what it's doing, and yes, it has a good output and so on. One of the things with these programs is that they need to manage expectations properly in terms of there must be a clear entry and exit out of the program, right? And then we talk about training infinitum, but you tend not to see the output of the training.
Yeah, training towards what?
Towards what, you know? Training just becomes a place where you go and get cheese puff and juice and display things, but
you're right, Didan, because we've had nationally as well. We've had an issue, to me, which has crippled our society in Trinidad and Tobago, where people want to provide training. Because they say, yeah, the society needs training. We train in young people, we train in women, we train in whoever. And guess what? You train, but you're not actually transferring that into revenue generation. You have no job, you ain't starting no business, you're not doing
nothing. You now have to make linkages. You see, prior, it was an area that you're using people. Now, you're trying to make sure that those persons who are in that program can be able to sustain themselves and their family, and also train others and set up small businesses, because you're training them from a skill bank perspective.
We need to hold up, gentlemen, hold up. I need to bring Kay Trotman into the discussion, and we have to beat the producers because we need more time. We need more. We don't have the time and we can't monopolize. Kay Trotman, I don't want to go back into this discussion because we will not end, but I want to ask you, $255.85 million. That's the potential estimates for tourism, culture, antiquities, and transportation. This is fundamentally your pet area. How do you feel about that overall number? Of course, we don't have the line details, so we're not really sure, you know, but how do you feel about that in light of previous budget statements?
It would never be enough, I say, but I'm not going to query the figure per se. What I'm going to query is, where do we put this investment to give you the greatest impact? That is what I am looking for as they work out the detail.
Is there anything in particular that you would like to see in those line items in terms of, we know this is recurrent expenditure, and unfortunately development owes a menial kind of allocation of 900 million. We're not sure. We have to wait for the line items to see what. Is there anything you're expecting or you're hoping to see?
Look at the challenges that tourism properties have been having, especially the smaller properties, access to finance. I am looking to see they develop a workable and a tourism-friendly investment window to which small properties or tourism properties can access for development and do not have those facilities, whether they're in the BDU, grants and loan programs, bogged down with unnecessary criteria that makes the environment difficult. So that tourism is a major sector. How can we make the criteria to develop our room stock, to develop working capital, especially after we've been beaten over the head with COVID? How do we best get this into the hands of operators quickly?
Now, let me ask you this, though. There's always been a complaint that perhaps tourism operators and owners of the businesses there aren't doing enough to contribute Many people feel as if, okay, this is just begging, begging, begging. Every time you see tourism people, they're begging for a grant or begging for something. You know, we've had in the past where grants were available and some people could not simply even put in an application because they did not meet the requirements, and that is just a simple thing like paying your NIS and paying the taxes for the workers, that kind of thing. Do you feel that for us to realize whatever it is that the administration is putting forward now as their vision or their dream, is there a responsibility, is there a need for greater responsibility by the tourism operators?
I think the tourism operators are mindful of their end of this, the equation that they need to hold up. Part of the process is that it is difficult to access the right kind of funding to deal with what needs to happen in the tourism sector. The capital, banks are commercial entities. Some of the work that needs to happen within the sector to do upgrade is not just finances alone, but technical support, advice, technical, how to put it, technical, it's a whole package, not just a financial package, but it's a package that addresses specific concerns of the target market that you are looking for. Let's say, for example, let me use as an example, the FCB loan that is being offered, loan guarantee, but coming from central government, that is said to be a tourism
Not just
package
FCB.
for micro, yes, FCB, said to be a tourism package for micro, small and medium businesses. Yet you are telling me I can only qualify if I have a revenue income stream of $500,000. Which micro business is generating that? So if I transfer that now to the THA and its business development unit, your criteria for accessing these funding, whether they are grants or loans, must be one that recognize the peculiarity of the sector you are dealing with and not be an onerous one.
All right, so that's an interesting take there because, you know, Didan, I'm coming to you now with agriculture. One of the issues that we've had in the Tobago space is the allegation that we feel that we're entitled to things. So when you listen to what Kay Trotman has spoken about with respect to the need for greater flexibility and understanding of the tourism sector, the pure business person will say, listen, you start a business and you can't maintain yourself, get out of the business. Now I'm coming to agriculture. Agriculture may have a similar thing, and in the allocation, food security, natural resources, the environment and sustainable development, 250 million, 250.98 million. How do you feel about that figure? Of course, that's a broad division, so let's focus a little bit on the agriculture. We'll wait for the line items to see what is specific to that. But how do you feel about that figure?
Okay, so 250 million, I suppose that most of that is for recurrent expenditure.
Yes, this is the recurrent expenditure figure.
Expenditure.
Yeah. We're not talking development.
I could recall some years, I don't know if Dr. Burris understands it and remembers it, but there's always a link between what you pay people to do and what happens, right? There's an imbalance. We're paying a lot of people with recurrent expenditure and we're not seeing the output on the ground. What you're spending all that money for. That is a question we need to seriously confront and answer honestly, right? So I don't like to get too entangled with the figures and so on, but what you're using the money for, what we're going to get for it, because I made the claim many times, and the Chief Secretary mentioned it today. The first time I heard that Chief Secretary mentioning agriculture occupies a very dismal space in the Tobago thing. And it's shameful, given our heritage. We contribute 0.7% of the island's GDP. Yeah. And I say that in the context of the fact that our Chief Secretary mentioned today that we have an unemployment rate of 3%. The economists will tell you that is full employment. Yeah. We have full employment in a space, and we could only come up with 0.7% of the GDP contribution. Now, what K&M doing, there's a big linkage. If we do have the tourists in the beds, less eggs, less tomato, pak choy, lettuce, blah, 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 blah. We're still importing too much of the food we consume on the island.
I have a question to you, but I want to come back to you a little bit because I want to run to Dr. Boris, and I'm coming back to you just now. Dr. Boris, yes, infrastructure normally, and I mean you're an infrastructure man, normally infrastructure commanded the highest the highest allocations. Unfortunately for infrastructure, health has done that this time around. But infrastructure is being allocated 455.36 million.
Yeah.
You could automatically have an idea as to how that money might go because you're no stranger to this thing.
No, I'm no stranger to it.
How do you feel about that figure?
I at least there is funds, and I hope that we stop, as Didan articulated the point there very well, that people produce for the money that they draw. You just don't go to work and say, listen, I'm going to get a pay of X amount today. You need to produce and do something for the money that you're getting. And if you are conscientious Tobagonian and you like to see Tobago produce, you always ask yourself, what have I done today that I should be paid? And when we come to that point, asking ourselves, what have I done today that I should be paid? We come knowledgeable that many of us not doing anything during the day, and the pay is going on. That is why some of the money is being it's apparent that there is no productivity out of the money spent.
But Dr.
Right?
Boris, is that an indictment on the policy makers per se?
Not the policy makers, it's the management.
So you're saying that there is work to be done, but they're not doing the work? Or is it that there's a shortage of work to be done?
No, there's work to be done. Sometimes you have workers there and you don't have the material because there's a shortage in the money that is being delivered. That is just a figure, you know. When the disbursement of fund comes, that the actual operation on the ground speaks to what funds come in. Right. And therefore, if I have money to pay a worker for his salary or his wage, and I have no material for him to perform, then we are in trouble. Right. It is the management of whatsoever money that we have or going to have that will enable us to produce better if we manage it properly. If I am sending 2 workers up to a particular job, there must be X amount of material there that person can execute that job. And therefore, management at the ground level is what is very important.
All right. Now, before I go back to Didan, I just want to ask you, Dr. Boris, with respect to the specific to the area that we've seen your face in collaboration with recently, which is the Scarborough Redevelopment Plan. The Chief Secretary, as I said before, pointed out some 35 million in terms of they're possibly looking for that from multilateral agencies, etc. The last thing I saw about that is that there were the consultations that you all held, and there's supposed to be some more consultations in August, if I'm not mistaken. Is that figure like a final figure? Is that figure supposed to go up?
Well, that figure will assist in the payment of because when you redesign a city, you must involve consultants and persons who can design the city properly, right? So that is part of probably that will come in to help assist in payment of some of those design, because you cannot just jump helter-skelter or ad hoc and go and say designing a city. When you're done, you have something that is not working. So basically, we don't want those gridlocks that are taking place now in the city. We have to strengthen some of those arteries. We have to ensure that the utility corridors and things like that are being built to take away some of those poles that are looking so unsightly in town. Right. So those are some of the things that are in mind.
So to
really bring it up to a city-looking condition in Scarborough, because right now all those poles with wires and all that thing, which we have to try to see if we could put some of those things on the ground, and that will cost.
So okay, this 35 million is initial working capital.
Some of those things that have to be done. There's some low-hanging fruits again down on the just in front the you call it. We're having a challenge in front by yachts down there on Orange Hill Road where there's no vehicle coming off the highway could turn right. All that area, those things are things we have in mind to fix to ensure that you have a smooth traffic flow in the area and that vehicles can go down, and you could say, okay, you go down onto Orange Hill. Where do you turn to go back to go to Shaw Park? Right. You're still wondering. Yeah. And who did that? That is there more than 5 years now. A mistake that needs to be corrected. Yeah. Right? So some of those funds you'll be assisting to correct those perennial problems, because it's there more than 5 years and it's still running the same way, on making the entire population very uncomfortable when you get to that point.
All right, heard you. So,
Right?
Didan, let me just come back to you very quickly with the agriculture. Doc, both you and Doc talk about productivity and the need to up that value for money, right? But when we look at agriculture, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked you. Is there anything that the agricultural community, non-governmental agricultural community, need to do right now to up the game, to assist with whatever the government is trying to do, or to even say to the government, listen, don't let us take too long all the time. This is where we're coming from.
Okay.
Particularly revenue generating as well.
All right. Well, first thing, the government should just create an enabling environment for agriculture and all the other industries to strive. First and foremost, right?
Explain what enabling environment means.
Enabling environment means access roads, marketing infrastructure, labs to do quality control testing and so on for public health reasons and so on. Those are the enabling things. And let's leave people in the, especially private sector farming, to produce. But we need certain kind of policy directives. One of the things I'm recommending is that in the agriculture, we can't be all things to all men. We need to focus on several of the key commodities that we do consume as part of our daily diets and focus on producing that. So recently, I was going through I like to read academic journals, right? And one of the things that was pointed out is that one of the reasons why agricultural policy fails is because they tend to be too comprehensive. They want to do all kind of things. Focus on 6 commodities for the most, right? And harness your energies and resources in producing that. We could import the others then. But once we optimize production on these things, then we can move on to other things. And then we could really start to talk about the food and nutrition security that we're striving towards.
Are there 6 commodities that are readily known to be potential revenue generating, sustainable things, or do we need to do the research to find out which?
Plantain, dasheen, blue food in general, but like you're planting, you're dashing some, your tomato, those things that we consume quite a lot, and a protein source. Either it be fish, we eat pork like that in this place, or chicken, right? Because you heard the minister once mention that we spend 1 million chicken a week. If you do the maths, we consume 70-something thousand chicken every single day on this island. We could produce chicken. So we do a protein source, do the staples, that whether it be sweet potato, plantain, dasheen, and cassava, and those kind of things. And yeah, we could import corn and grape and them kind of something.
So one question to you with respect to the things that we can import. With respect to clean, sustainable eating. Because a lot of what we're producing now, unfortunately, it's unhealthy. We cannot describe the food that we're eating as organic, including some of what is being produced in Tobago. Because at the end of the day, people buying things to plant or to farm, and they want to make an income, and then you're looking at quick turnover and so on. Is there already information, or do we need the research to find out, okay, how can we produce clean organic food so that we don't have a bunch of cancer people running around Tobago with diabetes and other things? Is that happening?
That is a major concern. But one thing that we have going for us, Tobago farmers traditionally, for generation has been producing food without this heavy dependence on agrochemicals. That is a given. Right? You do a little amelioration just to help out a particular situation, but it's not the wholesale use of chemicals. So we had that going for us, right? As part of our agricultural heritage. We just need to build on that and emphasize and incentivize climate smart, clean production. But that will go with some of the enabling things I talk about. We need agencies to come in and do soil residue testing to see how much parts per million of certain chemicals that is allowable. So
the next time we have this conversation, I want you to tell me figures. You know me, I always ask, how much does this cost? Because the bottom line is, yes, we need all of these things, but I'm usually interested to find out what's the cost and where we can get the funding from, because we know the limitations of the THA, and I tend to wonder, okay, is it that there's grant funding available for this? Is it that there are partnerships that can happen? Is it that people will come and do it free from big agencies?
We shouldn't have to do that. We have an organization called CARI. The last time I checked, CARI is a national organization. Why?
That charges people?
But the same way we could have a WASA that is in Tobago and in Trinidad and Tiantek and so on. These are national organizations. They need to have a presence here.
All right.
It's part of the national duty.
Heated conversation. The time does fly, but I need to bring Dr. Shane back into the conversation because we have to wrap up very soon. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Shane, to give me a little, quick kind of thing, and I'm coming to you with respect to development, right? So as based on your professional background, the Chief Secretary and Secretary with responsibility for finance, he spoke to, in terms of a breakdown of the 900 million. Pre-investment, right, fiscal 2022, 3.40 million. Economic infrastructure, 360.27 million. Social infrastructure, 400.63 million, and multi-sectoral and other services, 135.70 million. Then you go down to those companies. EID Cut, which is the Enterprise Development Company of Tobago, 15 million. Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited, 9 million. Business Incubator Program, 8.2 million. Enterprise Development Loan Program, 5.2 million. And the Enterprise Assistance Grant Program, that's 5 million. Now, there's some other bits there that talk about the construction of the Tobago cruise ship and the Storby Beach facility and tourism agencies and so on. But I want to look more at the actual development. In brief, what do you think, when you see these figures and the potential allocations, potential estimates, how do you feel about that?
Well, everybody spoke about development, and at the end of the day, for development to be successful, there has to be a high level of productivity, and the productivity is people-driven. So you can have all of these funds and all of this allocation given to all of these various programs and all of these recipients of money. If it is that it is for the development of human capacity, or the development of the island itself in terms of infrastructure, or the development of you could have told me we had carnival here before. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, but no, but development is it's a very easy to use the word development in a broad context and list all of these dollars and cents. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you ask yourself, where the money gone? And what was the benefit? And K. Trotman said it, you have said it, Dylan has said it, Dr. Boris has said it. The money has to reach to the people, and the money must be able to enhance people's skills and be able to develop them in a way that is going to be long-term for the benefit of the economy. And I keep pushing that. We want development. Development can only come through productivity, and high productivity is going to lead to financial independence, and economy is going to grow. But the people is what is required to drive that development. All right. And let me just just point a little more. Development has to be clearly articulated, and it must be laser sharp in terms of what are the outcomes. The outcomes has to be measured and be measurable outcomes in order to ensure that development is sustainable or not.
Well, one of the things I hope Dr. Boris might be able to do, and other people who may be able to, talk with the administration, is for us to really redefine, in terms of this fiscal budgeting, what development means. Development in the budget is a very limited kind of thing. And unfortunately, 900 million compared to an additional 992 million for recurrent expenditure, then we have to ask ourselves, what's really happening. But I want to stop and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have closing remarks. You're viewing Tobago Updates.
Sometimes...
Are you an artist, reader, or passionate about culture? Then join us on Saturday, 2nd July from 3 p.m. for the official Tobago book launch of The Chronicles of Kyrie, held at One Love Arts, Atelier and Emporium, located at Wallfield Straits, Canby, Tobago. an evening of culture, folklore, dance and music, celebrating our unique culture. Admission is free. For updates and further information, follow us on Instagram, The Chronicles of Kyrie, or call us at 460-5439. See you there.
It's a different type of thing down there. Man, we party till we drop down there. With a lot of pretty girls down there. Down in Tobago.
The Street 919 FM and the Tobago Updates presents the Tobago Updates Morning Show live simulcast on the Street 919 FM. Start your day with all the information you want and need with the simulcast of the Tobago Updates Morning Show live Mondays to Fridays from 7 a.m. on the Street 919 FM, the official station that defends the nation.
Tobago updates, and we've been having a discussion around the statement of the draft estimates of expenditure for the Tobago House of Assembly fiscal year 2022 to 2023. All right, in studio, if you're now joining us, I'm very sorry for you. You're going to have to go back and view the live on Tobago Updates Facebook page or on our YouTube page, or if you're on the television stations, you're going to check us out. But we have Dr. Ellis Morris, Dr. Shane Mohammed, Didan Daniel, and Kate Trotman, and we've had quite a lively discussion this evening. We need much more time. We have to ask the producers for 2 hours, all right? Kay, let me start with you in terms of, as we close and we looked at some of the figures, some of what the Secretary for Finance said to us today. Let us hear your closing remarks, how you feel about, everything so far.
Okay, I'm going to take the approach of challenging both the administration and the people of Tobago. For the administration, I am hoping that in the details that will be presented in the discussion next week, it would be really clear what is the strategic focus, what are the pillars that we are going to be concentrating on, especially in the short term, and how that relates to the longer term development, because the thing is, we are hurting right now. I do not necessarily want to see just stopgap measures just because we're hurting and short-term wins just because they are low-hanging fruits. We need to address it within the parameters of it contributing to that longer-term development focus. But to the people of Tobago, I challenge us. We need to up our ante. We need to up the game. We are going to develop, not because the administration is going to do the development for us, but because we, the people, will become productive, will recognize the part we have to play, and do our part in the entire process.
All right. Let's go to Dida and your closing remarks.
Somewhat in a similar vein like Key. The administration, as part of its governance mechanism, should insist on the whole thing about accountability. And I'm saying, as it relates to productivity, start off by positing a productivity index for all the sector, where we are now. What targets we need to strive towards, right? That calculus is easy to work, right? And say, okay, for the agriculture sector to be productive, we need to produce this amount. For the services sector, we need to get to this point. So people have real targets to work towards, right? And disincentivize laziness and worthlessness, and make sure that people strive for. Listen, you're building an economy, you're building posterity for future generations. You love your children or your grandchildren. What you want to leave for them, right? And when you get up in the morning and you talk to your God, if you believe in that or in that concept, be conscientious, as Dr. Burris just talked about, really conscious and conscious, and say, okay, today with the energy and strength and vitality that I have, I'm going to do this to advance myself, my family, my island, my country, the world that I'm living on or in. And all will be good. But for all these lofty things that we want to, it can't happen without you producing and making that point over and over. We have to produce. And then we could be rich like that. We'll be the envy of the world. And it could happen, you know. Right. I want it to happen in my lifetime, right? If they say 3 scores and 10, right? I have about 20 years and 21 years to go. So I've been realistic that by that time, I would see that as a reality and I say, well lived, thee done.
All right. So you have a 21-year hope. Let's go to Dr. Shane Mohammed. Your closing remarks.
I have some questions that I will use as my closing remarks. One, what is the contingency plan, or is there a contingency plan if they don't get the 6.9% and the budget for the entire country is not 57.4 and it's lower? That's one. Two, I want to see where the contributors are of profitability and revenue generation, because I am standing by my word and standing by my belief that the only way that Tobago can get its full autonomy is by financial independence. And we need to know where the factors are that leads to financial independence. And if I'm hearing from 2 persons on the panel, and I'm sure Dr. Morris is going to say it as well, if the main driver of profitability and revenue generation and financial independence lies in the hands of the people of Tobago and their levels of productivity, then I hope they are at work very early and very punctual in their actions and in their drive to acquire these dreams that can be a reality but requires serious discipline.
All right, Dr. Morris, over to you.
Thank you, Glendora. I just want to reinforce the fact that, you know, people must wake up to the fact that and ask yourself, what can I do for my country? And not fighting to say what the country can do for me. You have to come to that consciousness that you have to do something to change the dynamics of this place. And it comes through production, it comes through productivity. Every individual who may be concerned or who may are involved in the movement to get Tobago to a higher ground, know that it doesn't come easy. It comes with hard work. And hard work doesn't kill anyone, otherwise I die already. No, I'm telling you, I've worked very hard in my life. You think it's easy to come from high school, walking a road distance, and coming to move to get a bachelor's? You have no money. How you getting that? How you getting there? You turn, you get a master's, then you get a PhD. I have been working all the days of my life, and I have not died as yet. I'm here. People of Tobago, wake up to the coffee. You must do something for the money that you are putting in your pocket from the state. And if we come to that consciousness, I am confident that Tobago will turn around its productivity. We can start selling things again to Trinidad and to the region as a whole. And the management, if the management policies come in and kick in and be actualized, we can be confident to say that the productivity will increase and that we will be able to deliver products to anywhere in the world. Because we have the fishing industry, we have industries of agriculture, we have industries with the quarry operation. We have a lot of things that we can do to make money here. But we have laid back. We have been laid back for too long. I'm saying some people have, in other countries, people have 4 and 5 jobs. Here we just want to go and laze around and put money in our pockets and, you know, get up and get. Hard work does not kill anyone. It just makes you more healthier. It just make you more healthier.
And richer.
right? So let's try our utmost
Nice.
to whatsoever resources we get. And I'm saying, if the government falls short, or the central government falls short on the delivery, I think the THA should come back and let the population know the kind of money we get. Because it appears to me for many years, when the government cut the budget, no one comes back to tell Tobago what kind of money they got.
Yeah, well, that actually
that's happened.
started. Yeah,
Right?
That happened
it
with
started
Georgia.
with under
Right?
the previous
But I don't know how well it was articulated, but I'm saying that we need to let the population, you ask for 3.95 or 7 billion dollars, you need to come back to the population to say, listen, this is what we got out of what we act.
Yeah.
That the people of Tobago will be conscious and be wiser to know that this, we didn't get the amount of money we asked for, and therefore the productivity or the delivery of certain things will be there will be a difference. Right? So
Okay.
I'm hoping that there'll be a communication between the Assembly and the people of Tobago, informing them of what kind of resources they get to run the island in the final analysis.
All right, so there you have it. You've heard from the panelists, and they're imploring us as Tobagonians, improve productivity, increase your skills in a practical way to be able to contribute, not just, go and do things and then you sit down doing nothing at all. Dr. Boris say hard work never kill nobody yet, but we will see how that goes. You've been viewing Tobago Updates, and we've been bringing to you coverage with respect to the budget estimates for fiscal year 2022-2023. This will continue tomorrow morning on the Tobago Updates morning program with Ria, so you can look out for that. I think our page goes live from 6:30. Make sure that you put the reminder. For those of you that have never put on your reminder, like the page, turn on the notification, and make sure you continue to look at the updates, particularly around an important thing like this budget statement, estimates, really. All right, I want to thank my panelists tonight. Dr. Ellis Boris, Dr. Shane Mohammed, Didan Daniel, and Kay Trotman. We didn't have enough time at all, so maybe we're going to have to beg for some more time to come back and finish the discussion. But nonetheless, to you fellow Tobagonians, please pay attention to what is happening. Please try to understand what happens with government. Please try to understand, in a practical way, how some of these things apply to you and the sacrifices that we will all have to make. The world is on a global economic downturn. That's just the reality. And so some of the good living that we are accustomed to is going to disappear just now. All right? So we're all going to have to sacrifice. I'm going to implore you to look at your own households and decide maybe what you're willing to sacrifice and what we're willing to endure to get to better. All right? Good night. I am Glendora Lashley. Thank you very much for viewing Tobago Updates.